Team, welcome back to another episode of Live, Perform, Compete. I'm joining Joe Halim on Zoom. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much.
All right, so a bit of a backstory between myself and Joe. I first met Joe when I flew down to Indonesia, Jakarta. Joe's business partner, Aaron, who's one of my clients back in the day, asked me to be a part of an awesome competition that you guys ran over there. Called the Jakarta Wad-Off, and I was kind of the guy coming in and programming for it. So I spent some time down at Bengal S&C, which is an amazing, pretty unique CrossFit facility, which has been set up on a tennis court in the middle of Jakarta. And Joe is one of the part owners. Joe also at the time was running Joe's Burger Joint, which was we celebrated and started our last night with some, I think there's some chicken waffle burgers. But you know, in the conversations that myself and Joe had, kind of learned that he had a pretty interesting story. Born and raised in Jakarta, Indonesia, did some time over in the States, has run a number of different businesses, and is now currently one of the part owners of Bengal S&C, and as well is part of a human optimization clinic called OYA, which we're going to spend some time talking about today. But anyway, Joe, I don't want to steal your thunder completely. Let me hand this over to you. Please tell us about yourself and what you do.
All right. I guess I'm not really exactly sure where to start with this. How far back are we going?
We're going far back, right to the early days.
Right to the early days? All right. So I guess we have to start then with my mom. My mother originally was from the States, from Montana, from a really small state way up north. And she found her way to Indonesia via the movement in the 60s, how would you call it? She was pretty much part of the hippie movement. So she found an organization, a evangelical Christian organization called Children of God. And with that organization, she kind of found her way to Indonesia as a missionary. And from there, she met my dad. They got married. They had 6 kids. I'm number 5 out of 6. And we were born and raised here in Indonesia, homeschooled here. Then from there, I kind of spent some time going abroad as well. Suppose we can break that down a little bit more. Rough. Let's see. So when we were kids, pretty much growing up, all of our schooling was done at home. Mom are the main teachers. So everything that we did was from a Christian sort of curriculum that was based on teaching mostly religion sort of side of things, as opposed to actual practical science or social or things like that. But we did have some basics of mathematics and so on that were taught. Language was a big one as well. And yeah, pretty much from there, we focused a lot on sort of, how would you say, social education, spending a lot of time doing things like humanitarian work. So I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with this.
I like it. You're building a backstory that I'm already learning more about you than I knew before. So please continue.
Yeah. Let me see. So pretty much growing up, we were involved with a lot of charitable works. So one of the biggest things that the organization sort of believed in was trying to find ways to teach people basically about Jesus, their evangelical Christian mission. And one of the ways that they thought they would be best to do that would be to try to find ways to help people in humanitarian ways. So either, you know, doing projects with underprivileged villages, building schools, building wells, digging wells, you know, building some sort of infrastructure for people like that. We would also do things like distribute humanitarian aid. We have in Indonesia what's called sembako, which is basically the 9 basic essential sort of things for life. Rice is one of them, oil, things like that. And so we distribute goods that were donated from different companies around Indonesia, finding ways to sort of channel that towards the places that needed it the most. We're involved in a lot of humanitarian relief. When we have floods in Indonesia, for example, we'd be involved with helping with that. So I explain all of that pretty much to explain how and why I moved to Europe. So when I was 18, I decided that, you know, Indonesia was a little bit too small for what I wanted. I wanted to try to see the world and travel and do something a little bit different. And because of the fact that we were part of this sort of larger organization, there were places all over the world that had branches, that had places where we could go to. So from Indonesia, I moved originally to Hungary for a little bit, spent about a month or two there. And then from there, traveled to Slovenia, where I was working for about a year and a half with an organization that was doing much the same sort of work that we were doing in Indonesia. And then from there, moved to Croatia with a bunch of friends of mine to start our own organization. Again, still doing humanitarian work, but kind of doing it on our terms, doing it the way that we decided would be best. Yeah, pretty much that. And so I was there for, I want to say about 5 years, working around Croatia, Germany, Austria, kind of doing a traveling circuit where we'd work in children's hospitals, mostly in the oncology wards, doing something called clown therapy, which is essentially going into hospital dressed up as clowns, making balloons for the children, playing songs, you know, kind of trying to bring some sort of sunshine and light into what's a pretty cloudy existence. But did that for about, like I said, 5 years, and then moved back to Indonesia to try to start my own business, mainly because I didn't really see a future in what I was doing there in Europe.
And what was that? What was that first business that you set up?
So when I first came to Indonesia, I actually was jumped right into the clinic that my sister had started. So she had just founded a clinic called OYA, but back then what we were doing was focusing mostly on beauty care. So we were doing things like thread lifting, Botox, a lot of fillers, different things that were mostly designed to sort of beautify people. We were doing something called body shaping, which is hugely effective, combining some machines and different proprietary creams that were supposed to help burn fat and kind of reduce your shape quite quickly. And so we've had a lot of success with that, but you know, there was a bit of a fall off where we had a financial crisis a little bit ago in Indonesia, and when that happened, people didn't really have expendable cash. So that business kind of took a nosedive. So we were forced to look into different ways that we could shift the business and kind of make it something that would actually be profitable, and you know, maybe something that would provide a little bit more value than just cosmetics. Because at the end of the day, you know, people do like spending money on things, but not when it comes to just beauty products, you know. So originally I was there doing, I suppose you would call it managing, involved in the management side of things, running the day-to-day. And yeah, that's pretty much where I got a lot of my experience from in managing and running businesses, was just experimenting with the company that we started together with my sister.
And where did you then go from that?
So I think I was really looking for something that would fuel my passion, you know, something that I could dive into a little bit more. Beauty just wasn't something that was doing it for me. The work part of it was work. It felt like work. And so I was kind of looking for something that would, I don't know, give me a little bit more motivation and drive to wake up in the morning and go do stuff. So I actually met Scott Hanna through a, how would you call it? A flag football club that we had here in Indonesia. So we were playing on the weekends, and he actually invited me to what was then Bengal CrossFit. And that's when I had my first experience with CrossFit and with Bengal in general. So I think the first workout I did was Murph, you know, classic, come in, do half reps on everything, you know, no rep my way through all the work, and still kind of take about an hour and a half to finish the entire workout. And yeah, seeing all the people finish ahead of me, people who I thought I was way fitter than, you know, kind of stoked a fire under me that really made me feel like, okay, this is something that I should dive into a little bit more. Because I'd been training, I'd doing a lot of, I guess, bro science bodybuilding, you know, finding programs online, doing my research that way, and kind of just following basic bro splits. But didn't really have too much of a background in training whatsoever. So jumping into that was kind of an eye opener for me that made me feel like, okay, this is something that I'm not comfortable with at all, and something that I have so much room to grow in. So that was not only where I found like my passion for training, but also my passion for business, because I was able to apply the skills that I'd learned and developed with my management and sort of applied that in the framework of Bengal as well.
So at what point did you get the opportunity to move? I guess you started as a client. you stepped into CrossFit gym, you started training, fell in love with the methodology and the training side of things. How did that then transition you into becoming, which you are now, one of the owners of Bengal S&C?
So that actually was a pretty fast process. I think I started in, I want to say 2016. And by 2017, I'd already been making a lot of progress. I was working under Coach Stagg, who at the time was the head coach at Bengal. And, I was making a lot of progress there, and he was really helping to develop me as an athlete. And not only that, I was quite passionate about it. So I was, hoovering up as much information as I could, doing research on things, trying to find the methodology behind it. I was reading the training manuals, the L1 training manual as well. And then I got the offer in 2017 to sort of come on as a coach. So from there, I studied for the L1, went and took my L1 certification, and then went into the coaching side originally. And then about 6 months after that, I think there was a kind of a sort of, how would you say, a serendipitous sort of crossing where people were leaving the gym who were doing a lot of the coaching. So we needed to have an additional coach. And at the same time, I was able to bring a lot of, again, those managerial skills that I was developing to the table. So it just it made sense for me to sort of join the team. So yeah, I invested, joined the team full time, and, we've been going ever since.
And so from that initial Bengal CrossFit facility, Bengal is now, a pretty fascinating facility, as I first said in the introduction. I mean, the first time I went to Bengal, I was blown away. It's in a hotel, and it's it's not just any old hotel. It's a grand hotel in the middle of a mental city that has a luxurious grass grounds, beautiful ponds with koi fish, a fantastic swimming pool. And then as you're walking towards the tennis courts, there's this huge frame infrastructure, which has basically a semi-outdoor gym, which is massive. And that is the home of Bengal S&C. So how did the journey go from this small CrossFit gym to now, obviously there's some rebranding because where CrossFit actually isn't really prevalent in your name. And how did you get to be in this unbelievable old classic hotel with this amazing facility?
Yeah. I mean, looking back on it, when hearing you say it and kind of seeing it from that perspective it's really interesting to sort of see how far we've come. I think to explain this, you have to rewind just a little bit. So that facility, we have two sort of areas now where we have the main floor that we train on, which is the tennis court that we've sort of built into a facility. And then we have the lounge area where we have the reception that goes above the bathroom area. Now, the original gym used to be in that lounge area. So it's a very, very small space, low ceilings, not very usable at all. And that area was called CrossFit Senayan. And CrossFit Senayan, it was actually one of the first CrossFit boxes to open within Indonesia. So this was from way back in the day, around about the same time as Bengal CrossFit was founded, back around 2013. So this facility had existed the entire time and was sort of just slowly chugging along, but again, with that very small space. So in 2018, we were looking to move out of our existing location because Bengal CrossFit for the longest time, from 2013 until 2018, we were located in the basement. In the basement underneath a club, what used to be called Bengal Club. And so that's where we got our name Bengal CrossFit from. And that space was very, very small, 260 square meters, again, low ceilings, kind of dingy. When you're doing your laps, you'd be running around the car park, so every time 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you have all the cars kind of coming in and out. So you're just breathing in fumes, not a very conducive area for training and really no place to sort of expand. So we were able to team up with CrossFit Senayan and work together with them, taking over the management of their facility and sort of striking a deal with the Sultan Hotel, where we were able to refurbish that tennis court. So I think, again, it was just one of those things where it all just came together in a way that we really couldn't have planned for, but it just worked out perfectly for us, where we were able to partner together with CrossFit Senayan, take over that space and really just build from the ground up the facility exactly the way that we wanted to. So one of the first things we did is the facility that you said, that huge thing with the 5-meter high ceilings. We've got 860 square feet on the floor. We put up a tent structure. So keeping it as simple as possible while still keeping it secure from the elements. And then absolutely refurbishing the existing gym area, turning that into a lounge. We have a studio next door. Beneath that, we have a co-ed sort of bathroom area with shower stalls and changing rooms, and we have a sauna, we have an ice bath. So it's a pretty well put together facility with a lot of different things that we have to offer now. So
yeah, I mean, you said 800 something square foot, but you meant square meters, right? Because it's definitely bigger.
That's right. Sorry, 800 square meters.
Just making sure. But no, it really is a beautiful facility, and I think what you guys have done is really unique. I really haven't seen it anywhere else in the world, and kind of seeing you guys and tracking your journey on social media. I see you've now built an ice bath and I think an infrared sauna facility.
Yep.
Which is pretty epic. There's not a whole amount of CrossFit gyms around the world that can kind of boast a recovery suite there. What's the future plans for Bengal S&C now? I'm sorry, actually, Joe, I'm really intrigued to hear about why the movement away from CrossFit as a brand name and why moving towards Bengal S&C.
Very good question. I mean, we actually had a bit of an issue with CrossFit HQ back in the day. There was a bit of a misunderstanding with how we were using the name. Because we have a number of different facilities, we weren't exactly branding as Bengal CrossFit, but at the same time, we were still linking those as facilities as well. And when we approached HQ about coming to some sort of agreement, they kind of responded with legal action against us. And so it very, very quickly escalated in a way that we weren't really prepared for. So at the end of the day, we weren't really on good terms with HQ at all. They weren't understanding to our requests in any sort of way. And so we made the decision that we were going to kind of cut ties with them completely, just because, again, kind of hard feelings on one hand, but then also the brand of CrossFit itself at the time, we didn't really feel like it was what we were going for. I mean, there's a lot of ways that I really agree with the CrossFit methodology, but at the same time, there's so much that I feel that it leaves out, especially along the lines of always programming high intensity all the time. That's something that I just don't really feel is sustainable for most people. So we wanted to kind of have a little bit more of a holistic focus, with functional bodybuilding being one of the main tenets, and a little bit more of a focus on mobility and movement prep. So making that choice to switch from Bengal CrossFit to Bengal Strength and Conditioning was a way for us to be able to sort of put our own methodology into the training method, and then also kind of just get a little bit of separation from a brand that we kind of felt we were being mistreated by, sort of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you bring up a really interesting point there about, perhaps a slight disagreement with the methodology that CrossFit was putting out there. And I know certainly because, backstory, myself and you, Joe, have worked together for some time as a kind of coach and athlete relationship. You've been following our programs for a while now. And, we've had some good conversations about this kind of topic. We've been talking about, we had a big conversation about burnout and kind of managing work stress, and where did the training piece fit into that, and how can you modulate and adjust training to account for perhaps a busy schedule or lots of other things on your plate. And it was interesting to then watch your journey into OYA, and then you started talking about this Human Optimization project, where you were moving away from beauty and moving into the health side of things a little bit. So I'm actually intrigued to kind of hear about why you decided to move OYA away from the beauty side and start getting into Human Optimization. What does Human Optimization actually mean?
So the biggest thing, I kind of have this philosophy for all of the projects that I get involved with, which is that I need to find a way to fill needs for myself. So if there's a way that I can find to get something that I need, or to provide a service that I would require, I can imagine that there's many other people who are exactly like me, who have the same issues, or who would like to have the same services, or, who are not able to find the quality ingredients or anything that I would be able to offer. So if I can offer something that would work well for me, chances are high that other people are also like me and would want to have the same sort of thing. So the Human Optimization program was really just born out of necessity for myself, because of the fact that we had kind of transitioned this clinic originally from a beauty clinic, merging with a existing GP and dental clinic. That was step one, taking it from just beauty to GP and dental. And with that, we were able to partner with a fantastic doctor And with that, we were able to talk about a lot more of the problems that I was facing myself as an individual. So I was kind of just taking a look at myself. I was turning 30, and things just weren't right. I think we talked about this a little bit as well, during the WOD off. I just wasn't really feeling like I was getting the most out of my body. I was training hard. I was working hard. I wasn't necessarily recovering that well, but I was still trying to keep a relative balance. I was eating relatively well. There was a lot of things that were kind of going the right direction, but I wasn't getting the results that I felt that I should have been getting. So it was kind of just looking at the input versus the output that I was getting and saying that there's something in between that's just wrong. So talked with my doctor about it, and she was able to suggest doing some hormone testing. And this was something that I'd never really thought of doing before. I think taking a look at my body composition and my relative athleticism, I was kind of thinking like, there's nothing wrong. Like on the surface level, like if you look at me, that there wasn't really anything that needed to be fixed. So it wasn't my first thought at all. But
and
based on the symptoms that I was kind of...
I want to pause you there real quick, Joe, because for the listener, like, as an outsider looking in, you would never probably deem that there would be any form of hormonal dysfunction looking at you. You're a guy who was training 4 or 5 times a week, extremely lean, carrying a really high level of body mass in terms of muscle mass. So kind of like, I just want to paint a picture there for listener, because in our conversations, and this is why judging a book by its cover is never a good thing to do when it comes to health, is that you certainly didn't look like there was any form of dysfunction underneath the surface. But I think in our short conversation, it was clear that there was something that wasn't lining up. I think it was things that we talked about was like constant fatigue, feeling tired, feeling like you had no push, feeling like, you were hitting plateaus way sooner than you should do, even though you were ticking a lot of boxes. And we did kind of talk about that stress piece being a big contributor that perhaps you hadn't really kind of taken into account, and the fact that you're just a busy guy who likes to be doing things all the time. So sorry to derail you, but please continue.
Not at all. I think that's a big factor as well. That was one of the first things that we were looking at, was like, how high is my cortisol and how is that, relating to my testosterone and my estrogen levels? How are my hormones sort of reacting to this amount of stress that I'm putting my body under? So when we did our blood test, what we were expecting to see was really high cortisol levels, but in fact, cortisol was depressed. Pretty much everything was depressed. All my hormones across the board. So testosterone was quite low. The standard rate is between 9 to 34 pg per ml, right? And I was at 5. So I'm well below the normal range there, with my estrogen levels also being equally low. So everything was just across the board completely depressed, and there wasn't really any clear explanation for why that was. To this point, honestly, we don't really know what the cause is. It's kind of hard to look back over past history. It could come from all sorts of different things. One of my operating theories at the moment is maybe, during puberty, not having as much proper nutrition as I could have. That could be a cause of it, but there's so many different things. There's so many different variables that we really can't account for. So at the moment, what we have is just a test result that shows you that you're well below normal ranges. So at that point, you're given a decision where it's, do you want to do something like testosterone replacement therapy, where you are essentially refilling your proverbial gas tank with an outside source of testosterone, or do you want to stay pure and kind of keep existing at this subpar level? And so for me, that question was really not a question at all. And it's like, okay, this is something that I have to try, because I want to feel a little bit better. And you touched on it briefly. A lot of the things that I was feeling, like fatigue and hitting plateaus, like that's one part of it that relates to the training side of things. But there's a lot more kind of underneath the surface where, I think some of the biggest things that I felt that maybe weren't so visible to other people was just mood, constantly being either just very angry or just unhappy. Those were the two consistent moods that I had. It was a very, very difficult to sort of regulate my emotions. Another thing that's huge is complete lack of sex drive whatsoever. So existing in this sort of space where you don't feel any urge to, do anything of the sort, it's just a very strange position to be in. And again, looking at it from that outsider perspective, you really wouldn't expect that would be something that you're experiencing. So fast forward about a year now, we started doing the hormone therapy in July last year. And things have gotten quite a bit better. I think we've gone now from 5. My last test is we're at 17 is our new baseline. And so we're doing a couple of different tweaks to sort of see how things go, but we're going to try to normalize at about anywhere between 20 to 30 is where I'd like to be. Obviously that's the high end of normal, but I would like to be there because of what I'm feeling, the results that I'm getting from having those sort of elevated testosterone levels is just so much better. Mood is easier to control. I feel like training inputs are matching the outputs. So the things that I'm doing are giving me the results that I'm expecting, so overall, I'm pretty happy with doing that. And so that's one of the programs that we're trying to make available to other people as well. And not only just the testosterone replacement or hormone replacement treatments, it's also things like gut health that we're looking into. So taking a stool sample and then breaking down everything that you have in your gut and seeing whether or not that's normal, if there's any ways that you need to be supplementing or any things that you need to be eating or staying away from eating, just trying to find ways to help people to optimize their lifestyle or optimize their body in a way that's going to kind of get them towards the goals that they want a little bit easier.
I'm interested to hear your thought process when you found out, when you had your results came back, and you probably sat down with your doctor for a consultation, and you were laid with this option. Option 1 is we go down the route of hormone replacement therapy. Option 2 is you probably take a more holistic approach and trying to make some wholesale changes in your life and your training and your mindset, which how do you in that time and place make that decision? Because I certainly think, speaking on behalf of myself, I'm always more inclined to kind of like fight down the harder route to start,
right.
Almost, to be like, okay, well, it's nice for me to know I have the option to eventually go here if I want to.
Sure.
But, it's also like a subject and a topic that has a lot of, probably like a lot of misinformation out there. People have a lot of, whether it's negative connotation or just like misinformed connotations about hormone replacement therapy and what it actually means. What was your thought process and how did you end up going down that route?
So the costs were outlined pretty clearly. I mean, there's some pretty hefty costs associated with it, the least of which is the financial cost. Okay. So you're going to be paying a significant amount of money every month for your hormones that you're going to be taking. So that's a big downside. The other one is that once you start doing any sort of hormone replacement therapy, you're going to be doing hormone replacement therapy forever because your body's natural hormone production is going to be repressed by the amount of hormones that you're taking in. So it's not going to normalize that way. So you're pretty much, like you said, if you make that decision to go with hormone replacement therapy, you are no longer able to backtrack and say, okay, I'm going to try the holistic approach and go down that route and see how it works for me. The biggest reason why I made the choice to go that way is because I think the way that you're saying the hardest route, that was just, it wasn't something that I was interested in. If I was going to try to do the holistic route, it would have meant changing my lifestyle completely, not working the admittedly crazy hours that I was working before. And I think we talked about this briefly. Like at that time, I was very driven. There were certain goals that I was trying to reach, and it was very, very important to me to reach those goals. And so there really wasn't a question of, do I want to do this sacrificing my goals to sort of be well, or do I want to try to reach my goals and be well at the same time? You know what I mean? So I guess coming at it from that approach is like wanting to have it all without having to make too many sacrifices. If I'm really honest with myself, that's probably much of what drove that decision. I don't think I regret it. I think that having made that decision and having the results that I have now, like I'm happy with the decision that I made, but definitely the driving factor was just looking at my lifestyle and saying, if I change my lifestyle, I'm not going to reach my goals. And what's more important to me right now is reaching those goals, but then at the same time, trying to find a way to sort of get myself to be a little bit more normal and be a little bit happier and kind of have a little bit better lifestyle at the same time as I'm kind of driving myself into the ground. I think luckily now, one of the things that this lockdown has taught me is that that's not a sustainable way to live. And so I'm not planning to go back to the lifestyle that I had before of working those, 10, 12-hour days every day. So I am going to be trying to take a look at my lifestyle and maybe back up a little bit and sort of see about how we can, still reach your goals, but then at the same time, not kill yourself doing it,
And what is the future now? You said that actually maybe a question before that. What does your therapy look like? What is the process that you're having to go through every week or every month?
Mm-hmm. So daily, I'm taking testosterone troches, which is basically a tablet that has testosterone on it, and you put it underneath your tongue, and it kind of absorbs sublingually. And alongside that, I'm taking some estrogen blockers to keep the testosterone that I'm putting into my body from being translated or transmitted into estrogen. So those are the two main things that I'm taking. Besides that, I'm also just taking a lot more of a focus on recovery. So doing things like sauna, ice bath as needed, taking time for meditation, taking more time for sleeping, making sure that my diet's on point, doing all of those things to help supplement that as well. So I am kind of backing it up with the holistic approach, but the main things are that additional testosterone to kind of fill up the tank, and then the estrogen blocker to keep that testosterone that I'm filling up from being created into estrogen.
And so looking forward to the future, you've said that your testosterone levels have come up quite significantly, and you're getting towards a higher end now. Is there a point in time or a process where you're gonna have to start backing off to let's say like normalize or maintain certain levels?
That's exactly where we're at right now. So we're taking a look at different ways that we can kind of tweak the dose so that we can get a range that's going to flow a little bit better. So how it works is that you're going to have sort of a wave where your testosterone is going to peak and then dip. And what we're trying to get this to do is have the wave not only get shorter, but just be a little bit more stable. So we don't want it to have these huge rise and falls like it used to be before. We've been having to tweak this over the course of a year. So we weren't really having a whole lot of its success up until this point. But recently we were able to find, kind of a formula that worked well for me. So moving forward is just blood tests every 3 months and taking a look at our average data and then kind of tweaking from there. And, also taking a little bit of an anecdotal approach, seeing how my body feels and then adjusting as we need to. Another of the things that I'm also looking into doing is trying to find a way to boost my IGF levels. So my growth hormone is also quite low. Again, across the board, pretty much every sort of hormone that is responsible for being good and feeling good, like all of those were depressed. So, finding a way to slowly try to get those back into normal levels is pretty much the goal. And now it's just a matter of taking a look at where we're at now and then backing it off without losing the gains that we've already gotten.
I'm interested to understand what the, you're talking about the process wasn't quite working, and now you kind of got to the point where you found kind of, I guess, the magic formula that works for you. Like, what wasn't working and what have you changed?
So initially we were taking Nebido injections. So Nebido is synthetic testosterone. So we're taking that once every 3 months. And so, that was working pretty well for me, and it was kind of boosting my testosterone pretty high, but it just didn't seem to be sticking. So after that initial dose, my body would metabolize the testosterone, and then from there it would just drop again. So it really just wasn't working. And so it could have just been a factor of time. And now that we've been doing it for a little bit longer, my body is able to sort of metabolize a lot better. The other thing is that I've actually been bundling it with SARMs, and not SARMs specifically, but Nutribol. And Nutribol specifically has a synergistic effect with testosterone, in that it actually boosts the amount of testosterone that your body is able to uptake. And so that's actually been the thing that has worked the best for me so far. So it not only boosts my IGF levels, but also helps the testosterone treatment that I am taking to sort of take hold a little bit more and to stabilize me at a much better baseline. Because before, what was happening is I went from 5 to 7. In between that, you have a nice big peak and it drops back off to 7. And a 5 to 7 gain is just not enough for what I was looking for. That's still below low normal. So just trying to find ways to kind of boost that up a little bit more. And so far, it seems like that Nutribol is working really, really well. So that synergistic effect is kind of coming into play. So
interesting. I mean, also for the listeners, perhaps provide some context with regards to your training now. You follow the process program and the Compete program. Yep. I'm really interested to know, following I'm not sure how we would class. Maybe I have to leave this to you because I'm somewhat biased, but the training that you're doing right now, how does that compare to like your typical CrossFit affiliate and how they program? And I'd also really interested to hear what benefits or what changes you've seen from like an athletic standpoint. Specifically, if we talk about CrossFit, we're talking about, weightlifting, we're talking about mobility, talking about energy systems, capabilities. There's 3 different spectrums that people think about when they think about testosterone replacement. Is it going to make me stronger? Does it affect my mobility and the tension that I carry in my body? And does it have any benefit to my ability to be more aerobic or develop my engine? What have you noticed?
So far, I think the biggest thing that I've been doing that has kind of had the most effect is over the past couple of months, I've kind of decided to play a game with myself to see, you know, what would it be like to be a professional athlete? And so my entire life has just been revolving around training. So I'll wake up in the morning, I'll do some meditation, I'll do some movement. I'll immediately have some sort of pre-training meal. I'll do my first training session, which is low intensity for about an hour or so, get some sun, take a nap, have another meal, go to the gym again, train again, you know, come back home, eat again, then go to sleep. And that's pretty much been my day for the past 3 months. So my life has just been focused on that training, and it's worked amazingly. I think there's a couple of things, you know, again, that recovery with the sauna and the ice bath has been huge for me. Taking the time to really focus on sleeping, making sure that my body has the ability to recover, fueling myself correctly has been fantastic. The changes that I'm seeing, honestly, I haven't put on that much size, which is surprising. I was really thinking that I was going to just get huge, but you know, there has been some size gain, but this really has been, you know, sort of that I was thinking on. Even I think there's that negative stereotype of, you know, testosterone replacement therapy equals steroids equals big jack bodybuilders, you know what I mean? And that's kind of one of the things that I'm coming to see that is not really the case. Like I still look like a pretty regular normal person who just trains, you know. As far as aerobic capacity, I think I have felt a lot of increase in that, but I'm not sure how much of that is just down to, again, that 1 hour every single day of low intensity, steady state that I've been doing. One thing's for sure is the programming that I've been following with Live, Perform, Compete. I mean, the fact that it's cyclical, the fact that every single week you progress, you know, every Wednesday you're doing a progression from the Wednesday before, you know, you're able to see and able to track your progress, and that progress trend has been upward. Like there's not really been any days that I've felt off. Everything's been very consistent. Everything's felt really good. You know, everything that's been requested of me, I've been able to sort of fulfill. And that's felt amazing for me, not only physically, but mentally as well. Just being able to be like, okay, this program works for me. This is something that I'm actually able to do. You know, I used to feel like I was crushed a lot by programs. You know, you get into a training session, you're like, okay, well, you expect me to do 5 sets of this? Forget about it. You know, now you just do it. It's on the board, you get it done. You know what I mean? So I think overall, it's just, I feel a lot more comfortable in my skin, where I feel like anything that I'm able or that I need to do, I'm able to do. You know, there's a lot less of a gap in between what I think I can do or what other people think I should be able to do and what I'm actually able to do. You know, that gap feels a lot smaller. So, you know.
I feel like I have this perception that, you know, if I was to supplement with it, I'd every day be like surprising myself with this superhuman strength or this ability to do things that I had no idea I could do. Do you ever get that feeling?
No, not yet. However, there have been times where I've done something. I'm like, okay, wait, you know, really? Okay. You know, like you do surprise yourself from time to time, but for the most part, it's a very kind of normal feeling. It's very incremental. Again, this is if you're doing it correctly. You know, I think if you're going to just load yourself up with testosterone, you know, or steroids or whatever it is that you're going to do, you know, I'm sure you can find those results a lot quicker and kind of hit those spikes a lot higher, but that's really not my goal. That's not what I'm trying to do. So for me, like being able to say that sort of very consistent, but then still have that trend that increases over time has been huge for me, because I don't feel like I've been hitting any sort of real, you know, downsides or anything negative so far. It's been pretty even, pretty steady. I still feel like myself, but it's just better, you know. And it's obvious that there's a boost. There's obvious that there's a push, because there's something that's completely different. And I feel, I wouldn't say night and day, but I mean, you gotta be at least 40% better, you know, than I was last year. Yeah.
So your current levels now are what the doc would deem to be normal levels.
Yep. I'm
is
within
kind of
healthy range.
Within healthy range. So this is kind of like what Joe would be had for whatever reason, you know, that contributed to you having lower than normal testosterone levels. This is actually what you should be feeling like.
This is a normal Joe right now. This is, you know, again, like you have that normal range, and I'm still right in there. Obviously, I would love to be kissing that top line. I'm competitive in everything I do. I was talking with the doctor the other day, and she's like, "Oh, okay, I understand. You know, you're trying to push the limit a little bit more." And so I do want to be kind of close to that top end, but still very much within the normal range. Again, from 9 to 34 is healthy normal range, and I'm sitting right now at 17. So it's like, I feel like I got to push it up a little bit higher, you know, but we're going to have to see how that goes. pretty much.
I mean, so I think the interesting thing is when you're talking about the changes that you've made since starting testosterone replacement, is that you've actually done a pretty wholesale change to everything. You know, you're more diligent with sleep, nutrition, recovery, ice baths,
Yep.
saunas. And I think it's a really important thing to say is that, you know, the changes that you've seen, you know, both in its application to your work, to your mood, but also your training hasn't just probably come from the fact that you started, you know, this therapy. It's actually taken from a pretty wholesale
100%.
change to your lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think we've been doing this for about a year, and my results that I've started to see the most progress in have been over the past like 4 to 5 months. And that's been in huge part because of the lifestyle changes that I've made. So again, if you're somebody who's had the attitude or mentality that I had going into this, which was, let me just take some drugs and then not have to worry about my lifestyle so I can still smash my goals and kind of drive myself into the ground while still supplementing myself, that will kind of be a Band-Aid in a way, and it will keep you in a much better place than if you did nothing at all. But it's really not going to give you the results that you're looking for until you combine that with the holistic approach of actually caring for your body as well. And that's something that I've seen like over the past 3 months where I'm really being able to make huge amounts of progress. And that's coming from that focus that I've been putting on, you know, not just the training, but also the recovery.
So yeah, it's a weighing up when it comes to the decision. You know, are you willing to put in all the work to give yourself the best chance of success? And if you're not, you know, then you do have this option where, you know, you can go down the route that you did, but essentially the golden spot is the combination of the two, which is going to yield the most amount of results. What do you think is the future of what you're doing right now? Like, do you think we're going to start to see a trend? I mean, I think we are already seeing trends. Certainly I know in the US, testosterone replacement therapy has been, you know, somewhat commonplace for a long time for men as they kind of get older, 40s, 50s and 60s, but specifically in Asia and Indonesia, you know, what do you think the future trends are?
You know, I'm banking on what you said, that people are going to be a little bit more interested in it, because let's take it all things equal. If you have two people who are equally dedicated to not only their training, but their recovery, who are doing everything that they can to make sure that they naturally have as high levels of testosterone as possible, you're going to hit an age where your body stops producing. That age is about 30. From that point, your kind of testosterone is going to start going down. So by the time you're 40, you will have less testosterone than you 30, and that's just normal. That's regardless of whatever it is that you do. You can obviously kind of mitigate the amount of loss that you have by really focusing on the holistic side of things, but your body's processes will slow down. You will be producing less testosterone. And for a man especially, testosterone is directly correlated to quality of life in every way. We're talking about mood, sexual function, you know, physical function, mental function. All of those things are directly correlated to the amount of testosterone that you have available to you. So in my mind, there isn't really much of an argument to be made for not doing it. If your body is no longer producing the amount of testosterone that you need to keep you at an ideal level, top it up. It just doesn't really make sense to not do that. So to answer your question, I do think like I'm 100% banking on that being the future, and that people being a little bit more aware of it, people being a lot more interested in it, because I just feel like that's the way that it has to go.
Yeah. And what about the health side of things? Like, you know, we haven't really talked about any like the potential negative side effects of taking this. And, you know, like the internet is riddled with, you know, all the horror stories and the bad stories of what happens. Like, what are some of the side effects that could potentially happen as a result of taking this?
So the biggest side effect from doing testosterone replacement therapy is that your body turns it into estrogen. And as a man, there's a lot of side effects that you can have from having high estrogen levels. And these, again, is a lot of the things that you'll see from people who are using steroids, for example, and that artificially boosts your testosterone levels. And what happens when you stop is that because your body has all of this excess, it turns it into estrogen, and then you have all sorts of issues. Now, if you're controlling the estrogen side of things by taking an estrogen blocker, there really isn't that many side effects to be had. And again, the difference that you're having in a lot of the horror stories that you're hearing are about people who want to get those gains quicker, people who are trying to inject for a reason other than just getting to a healthy, normal range, but they're actually trying to boost. So if I was to put my levels up to say 60 or 70, you know, for an extended period of time, that would be hugely unhealthy for me. but that's not something that we're trying to do at all. So again, when you're working within a healthy, normal range and you're just getting yourself to that healthy, normal range, there really isn't a whole lot of downside to be had as long as you're doing it in a responsible way, which means doing your blood test properly, making sure that you're taking your estrogen blockers as well, and kind of looking at it as a holistic sort of thing. Yeah, I think a lot of the bad stereotypes that you get, or the negative stereotypes that you'll see from it, is from people who are maybe trying to chase something, chase a performance aspect or an aesthetic aspect, and they're injecting far beyond what they should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole conversation about, you know, men, but just human beings in general having, you know, lower than normal hormone profiles is probably just a consequence of this day and age that we live in now. You know, especially in Asia and big cities like Jakarta, like people are working harder than they ever have done before. They're taking less breaks. They're not, you know, they don't have mindful practices. They're not taking a holistic approach to looking after themselves. And, you know, I wonder how many people from your average person you take off the street, if they were to have some form of testing done, you know, would probably show to be in suboptimal levels.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see that as well. I think a huge factor as well that people don't really take into consideration is the amount of pollution that you're subjecting yourself to on a daily basis. And especially here in Indonesia, where we have some of the worst pollution in the world, that has to be playing hell on your hormones and on your body's ability to recover. So yeah, again, we talked about this a lot before, the amount of stress that you're inputting into your body, and that's just another level of stress that you're constantly getting into. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it as far as it relates to sport, because I think that's been one of the biggest debates that we've had, kind of one of the ongoing things. What are your thoughts on it? Like, how do you feel about the future of sports, and, you know, would it be better for people to be enhanced, or, you know, yeah.
I mean, I think most of the world can agree with me. Like, it would be amazing to watch an enhanced Olympic Games. You know, where it was just like, hey, it's a free for all. You take whatever the hell you want, and let's just see how far we can take human performance. Right. I think that would just be mesmerizing. But, you know, then there's a debate where people say, you know, who says that half the people competing at the Olympics aren't, you know, supplementing with something. Right. So, you know, I think I always have, perhaps I'm naive to it, but, you know, I always want to kind of give someone the benefit of the doubt when I see like elite athleticism, that, you know, it's purely natural and they've just achieved it through hard work and good genetics and, you know, probably some lucky timing. But, you know, my take on it, you know, I don't really have too strong an opinion on it, to be honest. I just, you know, I think level playing fields are, you know, is something that definitely has to be considered when you're looking at elite sports. But then, you know, when you take in the health side of things, and, you know, if you were to take a hormonal profile on every athlete competing, and some people just had lower natural levels, or at that point in time that their levels were below what we would deem to be a healthy range, and if people are simply supplementing to bring them up to what we would deem to be healthy again, you know, is that an unfair advantage? You know, or is that then making it then an even playing field? So, you know, I'm quite honestly, I haven't really put too much thought towards the subject. And I'm also, why I'm so interested in this conversation and speaking to you about it, is because I actually really don't know that much. I haven't really worked with any high level athletes who've been, you know, using synthetics at all. So I haven't had to make too many manipulations in terms of training design. I'm really, really grateful that there's people like yourself who are open to just sharing your story. Because I think a lot of people who are doing testosterone replacement therapy aren't speaking about it. And I think it's a really important subject to think about, because I think at this day and age, you know, a lot of mainstream media is talking about the importance of health and getting functional diagnostic testing done and understanding what your hormone profiles are. And, you know, I spoke to you about just before this call, I had some testing done, you know, just before COVID happened. So this is early in 2020. And, you know, I had free testosterone levels that were lower than what the doctor deemed to be a normal for someone my age and kind of what I was doing in my life. So it made me open my eyes to the whole idea of supplementation and, you know, looking into what options I have. And, you know, I decided to take the more holistic approach, but my levels were nowhere near as bad as yours were. You know, I was just outside of a normal range, and that was just one metric out of, you know, 20 different readings. So I took the holistic route, and it was just a good reminder to me, because I think I'm already someone who is quite diligent about being mindful management of stress, making sure you're getting adequate sleep, self-regulating training and work to ensure that I'm not putting myself into a hole like I have done in the past. So perhaps I'm not a great study for it, but yeah, to answer your question, I'm not really sure. I would love to see just a no holds bar, everyone get into the arena,
Right.
take whatever you want, and let's just see like what records we could break as human beings. But, I'm also not sure as to how much people are actually doing it at the top level. What are your thoughts?
I think a lot along the same lines as you. I think that if we were to go to a no holds barred, I don't think we could ever go back. Once you've seen that, you're not really going to see anything else as exciting. Once those records have been broken, it's kind of, no one really wants to see the fifth or the sixth, the seventh person run the 4-minute mile. You know what I mean? Like it's always the next thing. So I don't know. I think it kind of has to go that direction. I think that eventually it will go that direction, but maybe that's more wishful thinking than anything else.
I mean, I certainly think that the conversation, the social acceptance of things like testosterone replacement therapy have changed massively, probably even just in the last 5 years compared to, what our perceptions were 10 years ago. So, certainly I follow a lot of doctors on social media channels who really kind of say that this is just going to be a part of human society. What we're doing to ourselves as a race is not comparable to anything else we've ever done in our entire existence. The amount of stress we're exposed to, things like pollutions, and just like social expectations of what normal life for a human being is these days is just completely different to what it ever was. And like our bodies haven't had enough time to adapt to the demands, and therefore we're seeing, like, in a lot of human beings, I think most people who work busy jobs and families and live in urban, not even urban, actually, just general life in the world is probably going to have a hormonal system that's severely downregulated and they never know about.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think along the same lines, I mean, the way things are progressing, it's always better living through science. It's how can we make this better through some other sort of means? And we're always constantly trying to find ways that we can either live longer or live better. And if you find a way to do so, I don't see any reason not to do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Joe, I'm going to wrap this up now, but this has been a fantastic conversation and I really, really appreciate your time. I know you said that, you weren't comfortable being as vulnerable as putting yourself out in a podcast, but like, you've got an amazing story. And I really think that what you've been talking about here and the things that you're doing, experimenting yourself as a guinea pig and, helping people through your human optimization project at OYA is pretty amazing. So just, from me, thank you very much for sharing your story.
I thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, a great learning experience. I really enjoyed it.
All right, Joe. Thank you very much, buddy. Have a great day.
All right, man.